Hey, sorry. Obviously, I haven't done anything yet. My hair's still in. I just woke up mode. Uh, man. So I'm gonna look at chapter 9 of the Young Bucks book. If it seems like I'm a little emotional, I am. And the reason is so this chapter, I mean, I might go into details, I might not. I just finished it, so it's really fresh in my mind, and it's about the Bucks struggling, and it's by Matt. So he's married and having to work in a rubber factory because their father's business has gone under. So you got to keep in mind this is like you know a time in their time in wrestling. They're with Ring of Honor. They're getting $100 a match and really struggling. This it's big. It really is a sort of repeat of what I usually say. This is my favorite chapter thus far. Um, Talking about finding like-minded people on the road. And most of the guys were into partying, but they managed to find a few of the guys that weren't. And again, I'm of the mind that this is the way that wrestling is going, and people need to acknowledge it and to see the positive in that. Um, but oh man, they work the machine guns at a show, and the machine guns are like, "Dude, send us a resume and a sizzle reel and your favorite matches, and we'll get it in the hands of Terry Taylor, and hopefully we'll get you up at TNA." And like months go by, and they're toiling, reading about the Bucks struggle. Sorry, I'm really emotional. So I never, in my own wrestling career, such as it was, um, getting opportunities was really difficult. Um, though there were a number of companies running, like you had WCW and WWF at the time, um, and then ECW, and indies were doing pretty well. Um, I was more concerned with sort of cobbling together a living while doing other things like school. And oh man, I was just feeling it. I was just feeling how they were struggling and like living off of credit cards and all that shit. And I realized I'm still doing that by and large, and it's super hard. Um, but getting to sort of feel their worry. They're up wrestling for Ring of Honor. They're in the Hammerstein Ballroom. They're in New York, and then the storm comes through, and they have their TNA tryout. And just seeing one how they handled things so well. Let everybody know. They let the people at Dragon's Gate USA know. They let the people at Ring of Honor know. And Kerry Silkin and Adam Pearce had to be incredibly disappointed. They had just offered them a bump up of 220 a match from 100. And again, I love that they put these details in because it really gives you a perspective. And he lets you know what he was getting paid at the rubber factory. It's $300 a week, and you just can't. And they struggle, right, to even get to the airport, and then their airline doesn't have anything, right? They don't have any flights to where they need to go, and so but they find out another airline does, Continental, which is no longer in business even. They're going to Orlando, and they put their credit card down just hoping, like, do you have enough money? And I just knowing what that feels like, of like, do I have enough money on this credit card, or do I have enough? Can I scrape together enough? Can friends give me enough money? Can I? Fuck, man. But they got it. They got enough. They fly, and they haven't showered. They get there, and then luckily, and then they're walking on to keep in mind, I used to go to these TNA shows in Orlando, so I can only imagine for them what that was like. They get there and they have a driver, which feels good, right? They get picked up at the airport, and then they see like Kevin Nash and Mick Foley. And for them, it must have felt like a whole nother world. And then Christopher Daniels, who I've never heard anything but good things about, who I really wanted to book for Sacred Ground, the second one, but it just didn't work out. And so he ended up getting Jay Lethal, who was perfectly fine, but it wasn't. Anyway, so Christopher Daniels is very kind to them. And then they go, and then D'Lo Brown, who's another guy that I've heard nothing but good things about, is their agent, and basically goes like, "You guys have worked together before, just kill it." The art of knowing when to get your hands in there and when to let people do their thing is a fine line, and that part really struck me because I think as somebody who ran a promotion, I was really good at doing the things it took to get the best out of people. Sometimes that was just letting them go and do their thing. Sometimes it was giving them bullet points, and sometimes it was really listening to them and directing, teaching, Socratic method, whatever. In any case, they go and they're going to get an 8-minute match, but then they get a 15-minute match. Which means they're really taking a look. And they wrestle this match, and the crowd's chanting, and it's the name of the chapter, "Sign the Bucks, sign the Bucks." And they know that they've done something great. And the Motor City Machine Guns are clearly rooting for them. And I mean, just the little parts of like, Shelley and Sabin coming into the ring and then saying to them, and acting like they're trash talking them. You could tell I'm really taken with this. Trash talking them, but they're saying, "Let's fucking tear the house down," right? And, D'Lo Brown earlier saying, "Let's get you a fucking job." And it's just one of those weird things where a bunch of things seem to fall into place as they struggle as well. And then as soon as they go to the back, they, "We want to sign a contract. We want you to sign a contract." And Vince Russo, who is their booking, apparently was already coming up with ideas for them. And for all the ways that people want to knock Vince Russo, and there's a million, and I'm sure they'll come up in this book, I think it's important to remember in wrestling that everybody's a human being, and that sounds really dumb, but what I mean is at moments at least, I think even the guys that we consider the worst or the most incompetent or whatever, there are long stretches and moments where they have the best interests of the company or the wrestlers or whatever at heart. But then real life gets in the way, company gets in the way, worrying about your job gets in the way, your own limitations of thinking how great you are, failing to be a student in any way, shape, or form, or listening enough and that kind of thing. All that gets in the way, but there are those moments, right? So Russo's looking, and he just sees these two guys, and he gets excited. And it's why, whatever my opinions about Vince Russo, it's important to remember that at different moments, he was a guy who enjoyed this shit. And in this moment, fortunately for the Bucks, he got excited, right? And he looked at them and imagined all these possibilities of what they could do. And then, it's Matt peeling off from everybody and calling his wife, and I guess this is the first time I'm actually going to look at the chapter. Once outside, while Shelley and Sabin continued to hurl congratulatory words our way, I hid behind a dumpster And I know where this dumpster is because I had been around those shows so much. That's what's crazy. I'm pretty sure I know where he's talking about. Um, and called Dana, hiding my tears. She was commuting home from work. How'd it go? She asked. Thinking of how hard things had been financially and the road it took to get to this point, I could barely speak. Baby, our lives are about to change. I'm going to start taking better care of you. They just offered us contracts. She broke down into tears while I sat and just listened to her cry. Finally, through her tears, she whispered, Matt, I'm so proud of you. Fuck me. I get that wrestling is what it is, and politics is the way it is, and America is the way it is, and social media, and people tribe up and form very strong opinions that it's hard to move yourself out of if you ever can. And a lot of studies have been done, especially in light of politics and Trumpers and people on the left and all this stuff about how people get, the grooves in your brain and they get hardwired to just sort of believe a certain thing. If you're somebody who has a really hard, fast, strong opinion about new school wrestling and wrestlers like the Young Bucks and that kind of thing, I do urge you to read the book. I think it's important to remember that these guys are people, and they struggle. And this wrestling book, I mean, it's not that the story is completely unique, right? Like, we've heard these kind of tropes before, but these aren't cliches or tropes or archetypes. These are the events that happened as Nick and Matt remember them. And there are moments of real human triumph, and this is one of them. And it's important to remember that the wrestling business is a wonderful medium when it works at its best. Multi-layered, right? There's what happens in front of the camera and the show that's presented and that kind of thing. But that when those things blur, it provides such beautiful moments. And this book is part of the wrestling fabric now. And I'm glad it is. And I can't believe I'm so emotional about this. But, I look at myself and I go, what are the chances, right? No matter how the connections that I make and the work that I do, and, I've got kids and dealing with all of that, but fuck me. But that dream, right? It's a cliche, and you see indie wrestlers in particular talk about it. I have this dream, and I'm going to pursue this dream, and a number of people involved in wrestling or loosely involved in wrestling always spout out of these cliches, and but in the midst of those cliches, when the good guys win, it feels good. But if I'm being honest, I look and I just go like, fuck. I want to win too. And obviously I'm not going to wrestle anymore. I'm 48. And I know I have a mind for this shit. Like when Matt talks about in another chapter, like, El Generico really has a mind for this shit. Jimmy Jacobs has a mind for this shit. And I know exactly what he's talking about. And I think to myself, like, I'm that fucking guy. And then some, right? Anyway, I love this chapter. I highly advise you get the book. If you're somebody who's been doing this wrestling thing or being involved with it or being a fan of it for a long time, it will hit you a certain way. If you're a young wrestler aspiring and you have dreams and ambition, the book is going to hit you in a different way. But one thing I know for sure is this book is going to hit you, because it certainly hit me. I am Stephen Platinum.